And talking about the second peak of 2021, I want to show you an indicator that didn't just flash then at the second peak of 2021, and I haven't seen any others that did, but it also flashed right around the top of this cycle. Welcome back to Cryptological. Today we're looking at indicators that failed to predict the top for this bull market cycle. So what indicators actually worked and which ones failed? Let's have a look. The pi cycle top is an all-time favorite for people predicting tops. We put the top markers on here. We can see, every top, boom, 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 just about. It indicated, it showed market cycle top within like 2 to 3 days, I think. But if we look at the ratio of these, obviously the pi cycle top is these averages here crossing over, and that's when you get the top marker. But if we look at the ratio of it, we can see it's decreasing, right? Like everything in crypto and Bitcoin, you get diminishing returns over time. So even if you factor this in, the last cycle top only got just about over 1. Previously, we were at higher values. But it's not decreasing by a whole lot, okay? 1.2, 1.18, 1.05, and the last cycle was 1.003. So you would have expected somewhere like in the 0.9s, really, if it carries on that trend. But instead, what we got was 0.7, massive drop off, nowhere near. And the fact the closest point was back in, but the closest point of the pi cycle top to flashing, the closest these two averages got to each other was back in June of 2024. Pi cycle top useless this cycle. What about the Bitcoin extension from the 20-week moving average? Previous cycles we've seen, let's get rid of the 100% extension. And we're left with like a normalized level of extension here that shows it flashing every peak apart from the second one in 2021, which we'll come back to later. But for this cycle, no. In fact, they were dropping off as the price went higher. The extension was dropping off as the price went higher. So extension from the 20-week flashed every cycle apart from this one. Boom. Useless. The good old classic Bitcoin price-based risk metric flashed up in the 0.9 to 0.1 range. Yep. Previous cycles, it's up there. 2018, it's up there. 2021, it's up there for the first peak. What about this last bull market? What did it show us? Did it tell us when to sell our bags? No. It got just above 0.7 in March of 2024 and has been decreasing since. And in fact, recently on the peak price, it was in the just above 0.6. No one's going to be dumping their bags in the 0.6 risk level based on historical performance. Okay, what else? Bitcoin logarithmic regression bands. We can see the peak of every bull market was up in these green regression bands, apart from this last cycle where we hung around the fair value mark for basically the whole cycle. We got up, kissed it, fell away, got up, kissed it again, fell away. Okay, Bitcoin logarithmic regression failed. What about we look at some on-chain risk here? This is the MVRV risk, but if we take an average of the pool multiple, minor cap to thermo cap, the transaction fee, SOPL risks, let's take an average of all that. We can see that they were flashing, they were useful up until, it's not quite as pronounced. Let's go back to the MVRV risk because a lot of them, they kind of skew it a little bit. This is a lot more easy to see. We were up, not quite 0.9 for the last cycle, but pretty close. And this cycle, it's not actually as useless as the others based on the delta between the highs of this and last cycle, but the time is way off because the price wasn't at the highest point. It was only under 70k when this was about 70k when this indicator flashed at its highest level. It wasn't even up in the danger levels around 0.8 to 0.9. It was below 0.7. So on-chain risk has also been pretty useless. The one traditional indicator that everyone uses is, like the length from the bottom of various points, like the market cycle bottom, how many days have elapsed since then. from the halving and from the cycle peak. And if you look at these indicators, the top price wise of Bitcoin this cycle came in right around the end of when you'd expect it to. When these counters here reached zero, that was basically the top. That was like it's the easiest, most easy way of predicting it, just counting the days from the bottom. You can check it out. It was right around here. That was the peak. Right around there, around day 1050 approximately from the cycle bottom. That was it. We just dropped away. This is assuming that the cycle is over, which we've had several closes below the 50-week moving average. And that only happens, or when it happens, that's cycle over, historically speaking. But this cycle's been different. You never know. Maybe we're going to come back and put in a higher high, like the second peak of 2021. And talking about the second peak of 2021, I want to show you an indicator that didn't just flash then at the second peak of 2021. And I haven't seen any others that did. But it also flashed right around the top of this cycle. And it's an indicator that I've made up myself for this app specifically that I created. And it's a ratio of the Bitcoin transaction count to the MVRV with some normalization and some other little cheeky bits going on. But I made it about a year ago. And if we look at the oversold levels, we can see it's been pretty good at calling the bottoms. Not quite the bottoms of the last cycle, but near enough. And then intra-cycle bottoms before big takeoffs. It's been pretty good. We get a slightly stronger signal if we expand the time that we take the signal, the smoothing from, so the 28-day. Slightly stronger signal than the 7-day. And if we look at the overbought, here we see the peaks. Earlier on, it wasn't so useful. It's been better as time's gone on. It's been more accurate. So it called some peaks, but it wasn't the tops. Going back to 2017. But if we look at 2021, the first peak, very strong cycle. The second peak, very strong signal. Very strong signal during the second peak here. Top signal. And then the intra-cycle tops here. There was one here before a long period of consolidation before we took off. Another one here, 2024, early 2024, long period of consolidation. You could have sold, got in at lower prices. And then these last two humps that we had from sort of 2025 early to 2025 end of summer, the last sort of band this indicator was flashing at was about 123.8K. So all the indicators failed apart from one that I created about a year ago myself when I was just playing around with Grok and moving around some averages and normalizations and stuff. And because of that, I didn't actually follow it because I was like, well, how accurate can this one be that I created? I was figuring all the old mature indicators that we've been using for years would be the ones to follow. And they weren't flashing. So I was like, okay, maybe the one I created was wrong. But no, it turns out all the others were wrong and the one I created was right. Who knew? Did it help me? No, because I didn't take profits at the top. But live and learn. Maybe I should trust myself more next time. So are the indicators useless? Only time will tell. This is going to be the exception to the rule. This cycle was a little bit strange. It hasn't coincided perfectly with the business cycle. Retail didn't come back. It was a lot of institutional buyers, which people were screaming out for a long time. Doesn't seem to have had the effect people were hoping for. But it was a decent cycle. There was a large return. I mean, we were down at 16.8K, 16K like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. So to be up or to get up like over 100K above that it's not a bad improvement, to be honest. It's not a bad cycle. It's just that we didn't have to blow off top to get there. We had a slow grind up. So yeah, Bitcoin MVRV to transaction count indicator for the win, apparently. If you want to have a look at it, you can go to cryptological.app. It's available up there. That's all I wanted to talk about today. So hopefully time will tell what's going to happen with these indicators. Are they going to be useless, or are they going to live on? Or are they going to come back and start predicting things accurately again to help people figure out when they should make financial decisions in investing? You might say it's stupid to be relying on indicators to manage your money and financial decisions. And I probably agree with that, but it's the kind of the best we've been working with, and it's worked out historically okay up to now. So we'll see if I've wasted over a year of my time developing this app. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. Take care.